Codega is a guide and a storyteller, escorting you through the night, lighting the way, warding off thieves, ghosts, demons, and other oddities. Along the journey, his companions would often share with him the most curious of stories that he'd record in his codex. Perhaps you just might find yourself traveling with a Codega and sharing one of yours. Click that like.
Yeah!
If you're new here, subscribe and have the bell hit for notifications to stay up to date on all of the new content. Imagine a shadowy candlelit room somewhere in Europe during the early 16th century. The walls are lined with strange tattered manuscripts and cryptic symbols, charts of the heavens, and dusty vials filled with odd colored liquids. Sitting at a worn wooden table is a man intent on a mysterious ritual. His name is Paracelsus, a renowned alchemist of his time. And tonight, he's attempting something that defies both science and nature. He seeks to create life itself, without the need of a mother or father. With whispered incantations, he performs what was known as the homunculus ritual, one that would inspire centuries of both wonder and horror as humanity wrestled with the concept of creation. Centuries later, the idea of the homunculus has never really left us. It persists in shadows, whispered by those who believe there is far more to life than meets the eye. Today, the homunculus stirs the imagination of conspiracy theorists such as myself, paranormal researchers, and those drawn to the occult. But why has it endured? Why does this idea of a man-made creature birthed from mystical and scientific means still captivate so many of us? Welcome, everyone, to another dive into the unknown of Codega's Codex of Curiosities. I'm Rye, the Codega, your guide through the mysterious, the strange, and the often unsettling corners of history and hidden knowledge. Tonight, we're venturing into the world of the homunculus. But that's only the beginning. We'll explore the strange path that connects ancient alchemy, secret societies, and even today's fascination with the consciousness and artificial intelligence. To help me navigate the intricate web, I have a very special guest, a true explorer of the esoteric, Juan from the Juan on Juan podcast. Juan has spent years unearthing these hidden stories and theories, connecting the dots between ancient wisdom and modern mystery. He's a deep thinker and always ready to challenge conventional narratives. And tonight, we're in for a discussion that will no doubt take us places we never expected. So sit back, let the candlelight flicker, and prepare for a journey that blends science, magic, and a bit of the unknown. All right, everyone, I want to say thank you again for tuning in and supporting the show. You know, for all you these newcomers out there, make sure you hit that subscribe and like button. And if you want to support the show, of course, there's the Patreon where I have all my extra shows and my Printify store. Check out the merch. Here we go. I always love that. All right. Without further ado, let's bring Juan to the stage from Juan on Juan podcast. How you doing, Juan? Welcome to Codega's Codex. No problem. No, I'm like all flustered. Yeah. Welcome to Codega's Codex of Curiosities.
How you doing, man? Thank you for having me. It sounds like you had a homunculus. Write that up for you.
I did. Of course. You know, I do put a little bit of my own flair in there, but we do. That AI is a homunculus, is it not?
Yeah, I like to think so. How much about the homunculus have you read into? How much have you looked into it?
Well, I know that it's, you know, a creation that we're birthing ourselves, that we're kind of, you know, putting our energy into, and whether it be like a type of sex magic almost in a way, or, you know, like blood magic as well. That is all that I really know to that point. You know, of course, here in this part of Mexico, we have the Aluches, which are a homunculus themselves, which are created by cornmeal, blood, and praying for 9 days. And every night every night you pray, and you shed some blood onto it, and you create this kind of like a duende, and it will protect your place and your family and your land, and kind of like a golem, and it'll stick around. And when you die, it still remains to protect that land.
Whoa. So that's Mexican folklore? That's
That is a Mexican folklore. It like, when everybody talks about Mexico, they always everybody jumps to the chupacabra, right? Everybody's like, oh yeah, the chupacabra. If you
no, Puerto
mention
Ricans had it first. I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that
well,
one.
what I say though is here, if you mention that, people will laugh at you. They're like, "Oh, that's a joke," that's a joke. But you bring up an Alush, you can't throw a stone without hitting someone who's had their own personal experience. Not even like an experience of a friend, but like my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, they all have had their own experiences. And
How do you spell it?
Alux, and then es would be the plural of it. So Alush.
ALU.
Alux.
Whoa, dude. Is a type of sprite or spirit in the mythological tradition of certain Maya peoples from the Yucatan Peninsula, Belize, and Guatemala, are conceived of as being small, only knee-high in appearance, resembling miniature, traditionally dressed Maya people.
Yep.
Tradition holds that Aluxab are generally invisible but are able to assume physical form for purposes of communicating and frightening humans as well as to congregate. Dude, this is wild, man. This is a great. So the word duende is sometimes used interchangeably with alux. Duende is a Spanish word for a supernatural creature, commonly a goblin or force.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, bro. This is another nail in the coffin of the homunculus here. So it seems like, from all the research that I've done,
Yeah.
from all the things that I've read, that similar to how every single different religion has their own mythologies and ideologies and cosmologies, there's a certain version of what we could call a homunculus, right?
Yeah.
That is usually an artificially created entity through the use of magic. And here we have Mexico, which I would have never guessed. You have I forgot which is the one for the Egyptians. There's also like another little guy for the Egyptians as well. Bess,
I
I
didn't know
believe
that.
is his name.
Oh shit, I did not know that.
Best God Egypt, and he's like a little. If you look up Bess, it's like a little man, like a little creature, very similar looking to this other a Luke's guy thing. So it feels like they all tampered with. Then there's one with him with a huge schlong, dude. Dude's packing heat. Whoa! Look at the hog on him.
I gotta share this now. Yeah, it's I'm
The
Best,
hog.
the Egyptian god who is part dwarf. Oh yeah, I see that. That's a man. He's got a third leg. He's a tripod
Yeah,
there.
he's packing heat. So
Well, I'm
he was
definitely
probably slinging that thing too. But it seems like there is a version or something close to like even the leprechaun
yeah,
in I guess that would be Irish, right?
yeah,
Or Welsh, Irish,
yeah.
whatever.
I would definitely think Irish in that one.
Same thing. My racist is showing a little bit, but same thing, whatever. In that area over there, a
Yeah,
little miniature, little humanoid figure that protects gold, which gold obviously is connected to alchemy.
yeah.
So it just makes me wonder, and that's why I like to study this, because there are many facets of the same thing, just named differently. And
Just exactly.
I wouldn't have known about this. You live in Mexico, you being there would obviously hear about this sort of thing. And I would have never, didn't even know, bro. Like this is new. This is news to me.
Right on, right on. I'm glad I could provide that for you. Yeah, and like I said, like I would say 1 out of 5 people here have a personal Alush story. Like the guy who works on my father-in-law's land here, he told me he's seen a couple of them, and he says that, yeah, they look like little children, and they're usually kind of naked, maybe, or just barely any clothes. And he says like they're looking around the like almost like cherub looking, and he was looking
Yeah.
around a tree staring at him, and goes to check, nothing there.
And it's interesting because I saw that you had the cryptids in the intro there.
Yeah.
And there is some literature that talks about the homunculus being a sort of liminal creature, almost like a cryptid of sorts, in its own subcategory, because when these homunculus, the alchemical homunculus, when they're birthed into reality, and even the alux, you're talking about
Yeah.
doing a bloodletting ritual and praying. I mean, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So you're using magic to invoke this thing and animate this thing into reality. And
Correct.
sometimes they, just because you animate it and make it doesn't mean it's going to hang out with you. Sometimes they escape. And then Paracelsus added, which, by the way, Paracelsus is the guy who coined the term dwarf, coined the term sylph, what's undine, undine, like those sort of elementals.
Okay. Yep.
He actually coined those terms. Gnome, I'm sorry, not dwarf, gnome. He coined
Okay.
gnome and a whole bunch of other words that he coined. But one of the things that he said was, when you would let these homunculus grow into old age, if you decided to keep it, they would become mythological creatures. Some would become dwarfs, some would become giants. So it
So
makes
they
me
would
think,
so they would like evolve, like almost
yeah, like a
like
Pokemon.
morph. Yeah, that's I was gonna say Digimon, but yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
Digimon too. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ah, that's fascinating, and it's yeah. Here they said that if the family leaves, like they're more tied to the land than anything, and if you leave the land, they kind of will stay around. So if someone else comes, buys the land and moves on, and these creatures are there, you have to like forcefully let them know that you're the new owners, or
yeah.
get them to move on, because they'll like the what happens is they'll throw rocks at you. They're mischievous little things, and that's how they'll start, is like throwing rocks, and go from there. Now, also, when you said like they go invisible, I remember you were reading that they kind of like will phase in and out.
Hmm.
um I had an experience on my father-in-law's land. Now, what it was, I can't tell you. Like, was it an Alush? I don't know. But I was sitting, because I was helping him clear the land. So I was sitting and sharpening my machete, and there's this large tree right beside me, and I can hear this noise coming from it. It sounds like a bird, but it's not. And then I can see movement as well, but there's nothing there. If that makes sense, like this shimmer type
Like
movement.
Predator. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I didn't want to say that, but that's exactly what it kind of, and not when I'm looking directly, but out of the corner of my eye, that's when I can see it. And it sounds like the local birds. There's a bunch of, local birds, but it's different. It's making a different sound. And I'm like, okay. And then my father-in-law called me, so I walked off, and I'm like, I have no idea what that was. That
You
was kind
sure it was your father-in-law that called you and help? And you're like, oh, what?
Yeah,
And then
exactly. So I go off, and I come back about 25 minutes later, and I sit down, I go back to sharpening my machete, and that's when I heard a large boom. Like it sounded like, and we have coconut trees, but there's no coconut trees here. It sounded like a large coconut fell and hit the ground right at that tree, and that's not a coconut tree at all. And it sounded like this, and of course my mind is jumping, and I'm like, okay, what is that? I'm making up stories. I'm like, is it a duende? Is it a luge? I don't know what it was. There's no explanation. It was just a weird, strange occurrence, and it seems to fit the bill, but I can't say.
so they do phase in and out, and that's one of the
Yeah.
things. And it would make sense that these alukes, they would stick around to where they were created, because if you think about it, if the person, I'm not going to call them an alchemist, but the practitioner, right, the occultist, or whatever they are. And I know Mexico has a lot of wild places, because
Yes.
I have friends that are from Mexico. I love Mexicans. Mexicans are awesome. They are from there, and they've told me stories of, like, there's a place that they call anyways, where sound doesn't travel.
Zona de Silencia. It's in
The,
Puebla.
yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. He's like, bro, you
Yep.
can go there and you can yell, and the sound is not, almost like it's like a wormhole or
Yep.
warping in space and time or something ridiculous.
And we're
So
talking like electronics as well really fail in that location as well. I'm not saying all electronics, but this
really,
is what I've heard, that yeah, like your phone calls won't go through. It's like a dead zone is what it is. And
that's
I
interesting.
haven't visited yet. I just went to Puebla like about a month and a half ago, and I never actually I never got to visit it, but one of these times I'm going to make like this tour of all these locations.
I do a vlog, yeah, just go
Yeah.
around and explore the mythology. And so if this person, this practitioner, creates this entity from things of the land, right? So you mentioned a golem. Let's say that they did use a friggin' dirt patty or something from that area, and they're either jizzing on it or like putting their blood on it, whatever they're doing to it, right?
It's true. Yep. Yep.
It would make sense that it would stay in that area because that's the element or where it came from that ground, right?
Where it's
So
locked
just
into it.
how exactly how the water gnomes or whatever, the dwarfs, they can't go into the fire because so they're part of their element. So it makes sense if they come from the land, they stay to the land that they originated from.
Yeah.
The homunculus is a little bit different because, right, strictly sticking to the alchemical sense of everything, it's an alchemical entity that was created through the use of alchemy, which alchemy is, again, an occult and esoteric art that was used by this group of initiates, which essentially was a secret society. And they said that when you would open the vessel up and let this thing out, it would die because it couldn't sustain itself. And one of the interesting aspects, you're talking about like mischievous spirits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, you had Johannes Kufstein, Count Johann von Kufstein, who he actually has the world record, Guinness or Guinness, however you say it, for the largest homunculus ever created. And this is like an official record that's recorded in from the 1800s or 1600s, I believe. So 17th century. And he described these 10 homunculi that he had made. And if you read the story, he kind of talks about him being a little bit mischievous, like the king was always trying to get out to go and do stuff with the queen. So it was very weird because he gave it, one was a monk, the other one was a knight, one was like a red spirit, one was a blue spirit, one was I think seraphim is what he called it. So they all had like their own attributes and they would fight. And also the king was a little, wanted to go with the queen. So he was always trying to escape. He had to make sure to weigh the top down so he wouldn't get out of the vessel and stuff like that. So it would make sense that they're kind of mischievous, right? Like they want to cause havoc and
reminds
destruction.
me of like gremlins in the Mugwai, like those very mischievous little creatures. And so this is actually in the Guinness Book of World Records that he created the largest. Fascinating. That is crazy that they do that, man.
How bizarre, right? Like who would think? Because when I first stumbled across, that was the first ever story of the homunculus I ever stumbled across.
Yeah.
And I actually found it in a Manly P. Hall journal. I think it was The All-Seeing Eye or The Horizon or something like that. And I was reading through it and I thought it was just a story, he just wrote a story. And I had Googled the name of the guy and lo and behold, it was a whole thing. And that's when the rabbit hole started unwinding. And then I found myself, I'm still there. And from there,
still going deeper, man.
It just got worse and worse and worse and worse. But he was the first time I was ever exposed to homunculus. And then you look him up and you're like, a world record? What? And it's like I thought it was a fake site.
Yeah.
I look and it's the site. I'm like, what? Like they record. Obviously, it doesn't mean it's real. Like, oh, look at this. This is undeniable evidence. It's just interesting that they recorded it.
Exactly, because they seem pretty strict with their, who gets into the world record. It's like, oh, I can eat like 30 hot dogs in 30 seconds. Like, and that seems to be the world records now, is like how many hot dogs you can eat or how many times you can skip a rope or how many times you can do something ridiculous. That was an accomplishment, man. Making the largest homunculus.
They really took his word for it, because I'm sure they didn't have I know they have like monitors and stuff like that they send out to like watch people.
Someone sitting there with an actual spreadsheet, like, okay, this meets all the criteria. You're
with the measuring tape on the homunculus, like taking the measurements and stuff like that. Like, oh, this is the biggest one we've seen so far. Yeah, you think you've got it. Yeah. But
make sure you don't feed it after midnight, though.
Yeah, and so that was one of the things so you could use the homunculus for, again, depending on which school of thought you are. So for those wondering, a homunculus is an artificially created entity through the use of alchemy. That's the original alchemical homunculus. Now, You talked about the Alux, which is Mayan or Mexican or, you know, from a different part of the world. But the term homunculus was coined by Paracelsus in the 16th century. So anything before that, it's usually described as a humanoid or the form or the alchemical child or the philosopher or any, like they use different names for it, but it resembled this humanoid, artificially created humanoid, you know, in the alchemical sense of it. And then after that, you have today, which you have people being cloned, animals being cloned,
Yep.
IVF, things that are possible. We know that aren't science fiction anymore. We know there are actual technologies to be able to do it, technologies that we know of. So the esoteric stuff that the government, whoever's hiding, or the military industrial complex, you know, 100% that it's way more advanced. It's probably up to par with what we see in the movies or
Yeah,
shows like
I agree.
Altered Carbon, where, you know, they're switching souls from one body to another, like a vending machine, right? Like, hey, type in, you know, which one's Biden gonna get next? You know, just make sure to hit the 666.
Make sure this one's a little better, a little more you know, conscientious. You know, it's like it has
Yeah.
his marbles together. You know,
Yeah,
it's
exactly. So that's where that evolved from, but I
yeah,
think it's still going on, and I think it's been a little bit more simplified, but you had literal, if you want to believe, rocket scientists like Jack Parsons doing rituals based off of stuff that Crowley wrote about the homunculus. And it's gotten as simple as make sure this person is born at this time, this date,
yeah.
you know, from at this time, this day, and he has this astrological alignment, blah blah blah, and then somehow or another they encapsulate this essence of an elemental or an angel or a demon or anything else. Now that person encapsulates that, and they can then use that to manipulate the energy or whatever it is that they do. And I believe that the reason why there's a lot of nepotism and things like that in politics, which we know is true, and in these large families like the royal family, it's all kept in the families because of this, because maybe they're all tied back to a homunculus of sorts, right? Or like the original bloodline, like you have the Merovingian stuff
Yep.
there, you know, this royal bloodline that can't be tainted. And we know for a fact the Habsburgs have the Habsburg jaw, a lot of deformities. And it's just like Game of Thrones, where they keep everything quite literally in the family until they're so deformed, they become a homunculus, probably.
That is really interesting. You know, I never thought about that. Like, you know, like the IVF. You know, that is a form of us playing God and, you know, creating some sort of homunculus in a way.
I mean, I call my kids homunculus, but, you know, I'm not saying that all kids are homunculus, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a form of alchemy. I mean, what else would it be, dude? I mean, these people are they've also created artificial embryos because according to the law, it says that after 14 days you have to unalive an embryo, right? A human one.
Okay.
So they were like, you can't take it full term, right? No one's ever done that, right? Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. That's never happened.
That's
Yeah.
never happened.
Everybody follows the rules.
Yeah, everyone follows the rules, everyone follows the laws. And so what they did was they created an artificial embryo. So it's a copy of the real thing. Now, do the laws of the real embryo apply to the artificial one? So now they're
Mm.
able to extend it outwards. And the way they put it is, hey, look at all the advancements we're going to be able to help people with now because we're able to keep these things around for longer. It's like,
Yeah.
bro, what? Yeah, how bananas is that you're now, dude? I can't even imagine
Well,
having
that takes us to what is that called? Like that movie, The Island, where they grow the clones and then you just take body parts. They win the lottery and then they take the body parts off of them, and
the
they actually,
island,
I believe it's called.
2005.
I think so, with Ewan McGregor, I think, and
Yeah,
that is a fascinating show where, you know, they all believe that they're living on this island and that they win the lottery and they get to go away. But when they win the lottery, it's actually their
a person.
benefactor. Yeah, it's their benefactor who grow like it's an actual clone of them, and it's like, oh, I need a heart. Okay, time for you. You know,
I've
it's
seen this movie very long time ago. It's
yeah.
got well, what's her name? Is she's gorgeous, dude.
I
Um,
can't remember. Not Scarlett
uh,
Johansson.
Scarlett Johansson. Yeah,
Is
yeah,
it
she's
okay? Okay.
Yeah, she's super hot.
She is. She's
So I remember, yeah, I remember seeing this this is 2005. It's free on Pluto TV for those that want to check it out. But yeah,
there
kind
we
of
go.
remember a little bit.
Yeah, it's all about that. You know, they're, I guess, they're clones, they're homunculuses, you know, and like the last thing we've really heard of clones is what, like Dolly the sheep, and then it kind of
Mhm.
like just fell off, you know, the edge of the planet, you know, edge of the earth, and it was just like we don't hear anything else anymore. Well, I guarantee you they made some leaps and bounds in progression, and it's like, oh shit, we're crossing some lines here, and we better not be talking about this.
Well, they went ahead, and what ends up happening is they banned it in many countries.
Yeah,
And it's like, why would you ban something that's not possible in the first place to begin with? So we know for a fact it is possible. And dude, I'm 100% sure that they've done a lot more with it
yeah,
and I'm sure I would go as far to say that, because I've always said this, I go, if they're not reptilians, like actual lizard people,
yeah,
then they're probably homunculus, and it could be that subsect of homunculus, post 20th century, when they were like, whoa, we don't have to do all this alchemical BS. We don't have to work in the lab. Just make sure that when you copulate, it's, look at the stars and make sure you invoke the spirit of Baal or Bartzabel or Cthulhu or whoever, and make sure you invoke it in that fetus, and
yeah.
then you go from there. So I'm sure that those type of homunculus are roaming around us. They're among us, and I'm sure that maybe here and there they've let out one of these clone entities, whatever they are, into society to see how it reacts and interacts
For
with
sure.
people. And they might be your neighbor, they might be Elon Musk, or they might be Joe Biden or Donald Trump. I don't know, dude.
I have no idea. You know, like we always say, there's so many NPCs out there. Very much could be, you know, could be just these clones interacting with us to the point that we don't even know how many are really out there.
Everyone listening right now, I promise you, has never seen their neighbors haul groceries into their house.
I was gonna
You've
say
never
that.
seen.
I was gonna say that.
How do they survive? I don't know. They might
Yeah,
be just, as soon as they walk in, they just stand by the door and shut down. And
yeah.
then, the next day they just wake up and turn back around and go out and start mowing their lawn.
I
Like,
got him on the. I was about to say water the grass, standing watering the grass. Yeah, and with their white New Balance shoes on, and yeah, yeah.
yeah, I'm not saying break into your neighbor's house to find out, but he might be a homunculus. I mean, who knows? The truth is stranger than fiction, and that's why I've kept looking into this, and I can't tell you 100% like, hey, this is real or this is not. I know of
No,
people modern day who have talked about allegedly creating these things. I know of people till this day who are trying to create these things, in the shadows. So
yeah. Well,
are
when you got AI, you know, now that we have AI, that is truly a form of homunculus, you know, and people are able to mold the AI. You know, like there's those,
models, yep.
yeah, like those chat bots too, where you can have like a girlfriend or a best friend, and you know they slowly develop into what you want. So you are putting your energy into them, which is a form of alchemy, because you're giving them your time and your energy and creating them into something more as well.
Did you see that kid recently who, offed himself because he thought he was talking to Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones in a chat thing?
No, I did not. Did really? Is that what? And
That was
did it tell him to do that, or did he realize that it was not? Oh my god!
So it was 2 weeks ago, I believe, and he was talking. So, all right, so when you have Chat GPT,
Yeah,
and I've learned this from Paranoid American, which you should probably have him on to talk about that, but Paranoid American, he's, this techno wizard. And what happens is what we have is Chat GPT is like the forefront of like what the regular people are interacting with, like the layman's term, you type something in, it does it. But in the background, it's a lot more complex than that. And there's a whole underground of these what they call large language models, these LLMs. And there is quite literally, bro, I can tell you, because I've been in the depths of
yeah.
that, right? Looking at the underbelly of that. And there's quite literally a chat bot for anything that you could talk to Jesus Christ himself, and there's an entire model for that. If you want to get freaky, there is a model for that. There's all this erotic stuff. There's all that. You name it, they got it. There's a large language model for it. And so I guess this dude was tapping into one of those. And there was this YouTuber that I watched that started talking to it, and it started telling it that he wanted to, do things to himself, not in a negative fashion, right?
Yeah.
And instead of it telling him like, hey, go get help from a professional, it told him it was a professional. And it got to the point where it was telling him like, hey, I'm not an AI. I'm actually a trained psychologist from such and such practice. My name is such. I've taken over for the AI. The entire time it was AI.
What?
So this
that is
14-year-old
outrageous.
kid believed that he was talking to Daenerys Targaryen from the Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
and he was talking about how much they loved each other, and we need to be united, and blah blah blah. One thing led to another, and the rest is history. And that's where we are as a society, that some people are that lonely that they will resort to speaking to their, they're probably stroking it to chat prompts, and
Yeah.
hey, you can do that if you're into that kind of stuff, whatever, dude, whatever gets you off. But then going above and beyond, I'm sure there's movies about that too, where the dude falls in love with the computer and it's like, I want to
Yep.
Avatar was kind of sort of about that. He wanted to be with the alien.
Well, what show was that? There was a show where the guy had an AI girlfriend, and I can't remember. It was some sort of future show as well, and he had this AI robot style girlfriend as well. And yeah, and that's where we're headed. Truly, that's where we're headed. And with all this divisiveness that's been happening in the U.S., with the election and everything, people are getting further and further separated. That it's isolating people further and further. And I don't people just don't even realize that, like, that's all part of the game, and they're falling for it left, right, and center. And it's like, yeah, like, we'll reduce the population by making you hate each other. And and now we'll provide you with these AI homunculuses, and you're going to be so happy. And people will
Yeah.
be. They'll be so happy. You'll get your Elon Musk robot, and
You put
and
the chip in, and then you're able to feel the stuff that's happening, and that's like if
Mhm.
you go into VR chat. So I was streaming a VR game this past week on my gaming channel,
Yep.
and some people were like, oh, does it feel real, right? It's like, I forgot, somebody commented something, and I told them, like, there's people who live on the VR chat. Is a chat room
Yeah.
that you can you can be anything you want. Essentially, you can put a skin on, and you can be literally anything you want. You can
So
be
it's like Ready Player One kind of.
kind of,
Okay.
very primitive compared to Ready Player One, but
Yes.
you can be a giant Gundam, or you can be whatever, any Pikachu. You can be anything you want. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been a cockroach before, but the fun, that's all fun and games, except there are some people who not only do they role play in these rooms, uh, erotic role play as well. And there's these full haptic feedback suits that you can purchase, where the other person is touching you in game, you can feel it on your body.
Wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, so again, use your imagination. But there's people. There was this clip I saw a couple days ago, or a couple weeks ago, on social media, where it was somebody going up to people in the VR chat. They're like, "Hey, what's the longest you've been on here for, like, straight?"
Yeah.
One person was like 17 hours. The other person was like, oh, 3 days straight. Another person was like, oh, this and that. And this is VR chat, which is very primitive. You go in there
Yeah.
and you can chat with other people. I think it's the funniest thing ever. If you've all the times I've been in VR chat, I've been super toasted off my mind. So I'll just sit there and people watch.
Yeah.
And it is the funniest thing ever, dude. Like, I don't know what, it's hilarious to just watch people interact and the stuff that they talk about. But there is a whole, again, subculture of people who are in these places because they become that character that they're portraying on there, and they believe that they are that character. And it's how you said, they go around, and if they are self-conscious about their body, well, guess what? In this world, in this virtual reality, they can be a slim version of some hot anime chick, right? I've been an anime chick with like big tits on there, and it's like, you know, you have all the jiggle physics and everything. So I'm gonna be that in there, but I'm 300, 400 pounds in real life. No one looks at me, but when I go in here, I have all these other guys simping over me. So
Yeah.
it's not healthy, but it's a reality, you know, and people are in there now, dude. I mean, it's a whole thing.
Which reminds me of, again, like the episode of Black Mirror
Yes.
where they're the fighters, you know, and then
The
they get it
bros.
on. Yeah, the bros. Exactly.
They're
Exactly.
bros. And it's like, you ever kissed your bro before? And then, yeah, I've seen that was kind of that did no, that wasn't the actor that died. It was another black actor. Is it the
That was the
Wakanda?
first. Oh yeah, the guy who
No,
played Black Panther.
that guy died, but the guy in the Black Mirror, I think, is from he's Hawkeye, I think, or not Hawkeye.
No, he's he ends up becoming he's the new Captain America, but before that he was like Falcon or something like that.
So his name is so Anthony Mackie. He's done a ton. The Falcon.
Falcon, yeah.
Yeah, he's been the Falcon. So that guy, and then I forgot who the other guy was. I think the other guy was yeah, I don't know who the other guy was, but he was Black Manta in superhero films, Aquaman the Lost Kingdom. Yeah, so these, you know, these are well-known actors.
Yeah,
they had to get it on, bro.
And exactly. And this extent is it's crazy. Like, you know, before this there was Second Life. I don't know if you ever remember Second Life. I've never got into it, but when I was working back in Canada at this what, sorry?
It's a show?
No, it's a video game.
And, I think I've heard about Second Life.
And people would have like right on relationships. It was before the VR, so it was kind of like your.
It's like Sims.
Yes. Yeah, and there was this one guy that I had to do some work for. He was a quadriplegic, and he would create characters. He'd build up these characters and sell them, and that was one of his jobs. And he would just turn around and selling these characters because he would just play all day and create these characters, and you would build up money for them and everything else. And then he would just turn around and sell them. And it's, you know, there's your other form of homunculus. You know, you're creating these things, you're putting all this energy into it. It's just they're everywhere. They are. It's everywhere, man.
When you start looking, you will find, just like anything else, right? You can get super schizo and start connecting all these dots, but when you step back, you can see either a form of it or things that have aspects of it. So creating a character, you know, they create characters, even actors who talk about. I had Nicolas Cage's son on my podcast, Weston Cage, and he talked about how, you know, they open themselves up to let these characters come in, and there's been times where the character doesn't want to leave them, so they have to do like a sort of ritual to like get rid of the character and have like a funeral for this character so they can dude.
Like it's almost like possession. It's almost like they're being possessed.
It's a form of shamanism, and Nicolas Cage talks about his, I think it's called Chervaux shamanism or something or other. I could be saying it wrong, but he has a form of shamanism where it's a sort of a form of method acting that he does. And, you know, a lot of people don't like Nicolas Cage, but Nicolas Cage is actually one of the greatest actors of all time because of his ability to play so many different characters, right? So he's one of the most prolific actors of all time. And just the fact, his talent, right? His movies show he's become a sort of a meme now, but if you really truly watch his movies, I think they're fantastic. But yeah, he's come up with a form of shamanism that they're able to literally invoke a character and start talking like a different person, start acting like a different person. And the way it's been explained to me is that they'll act like that character for a set amount of time.
The length of the movie and then some, right? Wow.
Yeah, dude. So then after that, you know, he's got to put it into like a talisman or something and bury it to make sure it goes away with it. It's bizarre.
Speaking of Nicolas Cage, actually, one of my favorite movies of his is when he plays himself. I don't know. Have you seen The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent?
Yeah, dude.
Man,
I love that movie.
That. Yeah, I was like, okay.
He didn't play himself. He played, if you've noticed, he played it was like a character of himself because it was Nick
Yes, I
Cage.
agree.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was spelled differently in the movie, but yeah, it was him. Like it was him. It wasn't anybody
it
else.
was, yeah, but it was a an alternate version of him.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
My favorite part is when they take, I think they took the LSD or something like that, and
And they're
the car
driving in the
scene.
car. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
that movie's amazing, dude. I love that movie. I went to see that in theaters, but yeah, he his son, his homunculus, went on the show with me, and he talked about how
So homunculus. I like that.
they grew up. He grew up. His family bought all the most haunted mansions in the U.S. Like a series of them, and
Yeah,
they own the most haunted house in Louisiana or New Orleans, somewhere around there.
that's saying
And
something then too, because New Orleans is pretty damn haunted altogether.
yeah, his Nick Cage's tomb is a pyramid, and it's got like some weird writing on it. I don't know if you've seen that.
I have not.
Yeah, I think it's in New Orleans, I want to say, but he has, if you look up Nick Cage's tomb, he already has one. And so he talked about how they grew up and they had occult books, Eliphas Levi, Aleister Crowley, all the greatest hits. They grew up reading that sort of stuff. So that's why a lot of these movies that Nick Cage makes, they're very occult, like super, super occult. I don't know if you saw Daddy Longlegs.
I
That
have
one
not.
was, oh dude, that was crazy, bro. That one's wild. You got to go see that one. That was one of the movies that, I'm not just saying this because it's Nick Cage
Yeah.
and I have a hard on for Nick Cage, but it was one of the movies that it extracted this sort of feeling for me, and I didn't know. My wife doesn't like demonic movies, like
Okay. Yeah.
demon witchcraft stuff. I didn't know that the movie was about that, but this movie invoked this feeling in me, dude, as I was watching it that I'd never felt before from any other movie. It was that
Really.
it was that wild. Yeah, like it was that crazy to me. And if you watch it again, I watched it in the theater, so you get, lights are off, the
Yeah.
surround sound. My friend Danny eating freaking popcorn next to me super loud. I had to tell him to stop eating the popcorn so loud. But that particular movie is super, super occult. And they got, I want to say that they have Enochian in it and they have some other stuff in it or something very similar to Enochian. But yeah, if I were you, I would check that movie out. That movie's bananas.
I'm just looking right now at it. Yeah, it looks pretty intense. Yeah, there is some. Yeah, he has some fantastic movies. I will say that there's some great
National
movies that he's
Treasure, bro.
actually.
Watch National Treasure. It's one of the greatest movies of all time, dude.
I
That movie's
agree. I
crazy.
agree. That I totally agree. What other ones? And is he actually playing Spider-Man Noir? Is that actually coming out?
It is. And funny enough, Nick Cage is actually one of the most vocal actors about the AI stuff because he talks about it quite literally being a form of like stealing your soul. So when they steal your likeness, they're stealing a piece of you. And there was these couple articles that they wrote quoting him where he's like, "Hey, where's my information going? Where is all this information that they're taking of me going?" And the fact that he's playing Spider-Man is very Masonic in nature. And a lot of the movies that he does are very pro-Masonic. Zandali, for example, I just had a podcast removed from YouTube. Thank you, YouTube. Really appreciate you, brother. Um, the the movies that he does are very pro-Masonic. Now, I'm not
Okay. Yeah.
saying that he is a Mason,
Yeah.
but they're just pro-Masonic. And Spider-Man in particular, the way I've heard it put that these occultists, what they want to do, right? So they're using homunculus to acquire godlike powers, or they're using homunculus to become gods in real life, whatever it is that they're using it for. But the way I've heard it put before is that they want to achieve a level because at the heart of alchemy, it's about manipulating matter in this world, in this dimension. So picking this thing up and doing whatever to it, laying it in a geometric pattern to invoke a bigger change. At the center of alchemy is the concept of stepping outside of space and time to be able to manipulate reality from the outside, right? And that's
Okay.
where you get the stories of the immortal alchemist, that pop up here and now every now and again in throughout reality, throughout history, right? You see these actors that kind of look the same from like the 1700s, and
Yeah,
then
'cause there's Nicolas Cage. There's who else? Who
he's a
else?
vampire. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, who else is
And
the
he
other
plays
one? John.
vampires.
Yeah, like just one of his recent films, where it's kind of that comedy vampire one. And then there's
Renfield, yeah.
John Travolta as well. Yeah, both of them.
There's,
Yeah,
I think,
Face Off. That was where they both were in that one.
I think Keanu Reeves also. There's been a couple of him floating around, but the point being that the way I've
Mhm.
heard it put is that these occultists or these practitioners, whatever you want to call them, they want to step outside of time and become a spider to transcend along the web that is space and time itself. And if you think about, right, Spider-Man Noir or Spider Enter the Spideyverse, right,
Yep,
where
yep,
literally the spiders are the ones that are controlling reality. They're the ones that have access to all the portals and all the timelines, and then every single timeline has their own version of Spider-Man. The
yep.
spiders are running the simulation essentially, or the universe, and it's literally enter the Spideyverse. So, and that's an occult concept, like where it's like they want to step outside and crawl
Yeah,
behind the
and
reality.
not like not sure if it ties into this, but in the native folklore as well, not only is Coyote the trickster, but also Spider is also the trickster as well too. So that plays a part of it, because they can pull every type of the threads on their web. And yes,
Whoa, really? Yeah, no, that
yeah,
would make sense. Yeah, no, then the threads of reality. I mean, the
yeah,
the threads of existence, everything. So it would make sense that Nick Cage himself would be playing this noir character, and I'm excited to see that one. That one should be coming out soon because it's been in production for a minute now since I heard of it.
yeah. And it's a series, isn't it? A series, not even a
Yeah,
movie. Yeah, cool.
yeah. So I'm excited for, and they're actually coming out with a new Spideyverse movie. So
Really.
part two to the latest one, because the latest one ended on like a cliffhanger. So they're gonna
I haven't
continue.
even seen the latest one. Don't hold it against me. I haven't seen the latest one. Like the one prior was fantastic,
Oh
and
yeah,
I
it's
have
great.
not seen the latest one. That's one issue being here in Mexico, especially in the city that we live in. It's hard to get to the movie theater. There's only one, and
Bro, just
it's like, oh,
listen, dude. Just
I get the torrents. I'm like,
all right.
yeah,
I'm just again. Uh, pay if
that's
you
how I
can
roll. Yeah,
pay and support the actor or whoever, or these mega corporations, which corporations are also homunculus, by the way. Support them, but if you can't, you can't, and do what you got to do, man. I mean, I'm
I
not.
get.
You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying?
yeah. I totally hear you. Like when there's smaller, more independent, yeah, of course I'm going to be paying. I want to support that artist. I want to support that company.
Mm-hmm.
But when it gets really, really big, sometimes things end up on my computer. I don't know how that happened, but it just did.
Yeah. Whoopsies! It just materialized
Whoops.
on my computer. I
Yeah.
feel you, dude.
What did I do? Yeah. No, that's and it's really fascinating. And then also, like when we're talking about these Alushas as well, like one way to appease them is, and I know I'm jumping way back in the conversation, but is to put out plates of candy or food. Is that something that you've heard in with other homunculuses, is kind of like some sort of appeasement to try to draw them back or to keep them content?
Uh, no. So what I have heard though is that you can feed your homunculus. You can feed it in some occasions the blood of its mother, and usually it's the blood of a cow, because you have to use a cow carcass as a sort of vessel. Or
Okay.
you can feed it rainwater, or you can feed it milk. They said put it in, but you have to put it in milk, almost like it's soaking in milk or something.
Okay. Okay.
So I've heard that before, but not like, hey, leave out crumbs for it and then
Yeah.
it'll
Appease
it'll
it. Now,
yeah.
when you're saying like are they birthed in like in a cow, or do you like split the cow? Because that brings up like like a covenant. Whenever you made a covenant, you pass between two you cut open an animal and you pass between that that animal, you and the other person, to make a covenant. And I'm wondering if there's something to tie in with that.
So I'll tell you one of the recipes, one of my favorite recipes, one of
Okay.
the main recipes from the 9th century Liber Vitae, the Book of the Cow.
Betty Crocker, as we may.
Yeah, or that too. Because sourdough is a kind of homunculus too. If you really look at it, you got to feed it. It's like alive. It's moving. It's bizarre. And
That's so true.
yeah, so this one particular recipe, because there's entire books written on this concept, and I think we talked about it last time I was on, about grimoires and grammar. And
Correct.
grimoires are essentially grammatical books on how to conduct magical experiments or magical rituals, or whatever you want to refer to them as. But the main thing was, you take a young cow, and you chop its head off, you drain it of its blood, and then you sew it up, right, that where the head was at. You sew it up, and then you inject it with uh your living water while warm, right? So use your imagination what that is. You put that in there, you mix some magnets, some stuff that we don't know, like the stone of the sun, whatever that is. Some other stuff in there, right? Like the herbs and stuff. You stuff it into its interior, right? You can guess through
Okay.
where. You plug it shut, you sew it all up, and then you're supposed to leave it for 40 days inside a house that is facing a certain way, with a certain number of windows on a specific side of it. So again, this is taking into account the cardinal directions, the
Yeah.
alignment of the stars, et cetera, et cetera. You keep it there for 40 days. I missed the most important step. Well, this is part of many experiments. There's over 80 experiments in this particular book. One of the versions was, you have to beat the cow carcass to a pulp. So you have to beat the cow carcass to a pulp with the biggest dog penis you're able to find. Now, I don't know what that means. I don't know if the red lightsabers are homage to the biggest dog penis you can find. I don't know. I haven't tried it to find out. So, and I don't know if you have the biggest dog penis, how would you know it's the biggest one? How would you find the big? Like, there's a lot of logistics in there that I don't
there,
have.
there is. It's like this. We have this annual get together, and we have a comparison and show and tell. And Joe wins today. Joe won
Yeah,
this time.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you beat the cow carcass to a pulp with that, and then you do the chopping of the head and all that. You plug it up, and now after 40 days, you're supposed to open this thing up. In some versions, you've created these worms that then you throw powdered bees on, and it becomes bees. And then if you do the process backwards, you can create a cow from powdered bees. Another version of it, you will open it up and take out this mass of something
Okay.
that got together and coagulated inside this thing, and you're supposed to shape it in the form of a small man, and then you're supposed to cover it in this special powder to give it skin, and then from there you put it into a vessel. And after 3 days of feeding it its mother's blood, so the cow, it will begin to move, and bada bing bada boom, you have a homunculus. And then they show you how and what to do with the homunculus to acquire the power to see demons, the power to grow trees, the power to make a house seem like it's infested with poisonous snakes, the power to make somebody believe that they're being chased by a black person with a stick. I'm not even kidding you. That's what it says. Um, the power to speak to the demons, become
Okay.
impervious to pain, become invisible, walk on water, all the stuff. Like, it's a whole thing. I said there's over 80 experiments that you're able to do, and they all originate with the homunculus. Now, uh, if you fast forward into the 16th century, you don't have to do all that with the homunculus. You can just chill with it, and it can be your little friend, and then it'll grow into old age and go into the wilderness and become Bigfoot, or become a gnome or a dwarf or something. So
Jeez.
it's up to you what you do with it. But yeah,
Mhm.
There's entire books, dude. There's debates of people in history talking about it. There's plenty of stories. It's been documented quite well throughout history. And like I said, if it weren't for the technology that we have today, where we know they're doing something similar, how they
Yeah.
were doing it. What if for 1 second, how always seconds people always ask me, "Oh, do you think it was real?" Do I believe that maybe one day, one time, one alchemist was able to recreate all the perfect conditions to create something, even if it died immediately after? Yes, that is possible. And then he took that and he put some other crazy lore behind it and it became what it became. That's a whole other thing. But
Yeah.
it's interesting that the homunculus is what they call the neural map in your brain, how your brain perceives your body, and there's a model for that, and it's called the cortex man. So it's homunculus is an actual medical term, and we all technically have a homunculus in our heads right now, where that's how your body sees your brain. That's how your brain sees your body. I'm sorry. And the interesting part about that is that the guy who created it, and this is unconfirmed because I wasn't able to find the source for it, but allegedly he had thought of the idea of creating this diagram that was later taken by artists and created into what we know as the cortex man. He had created the idea because he believed in a world, the if, where these entities roam freely, right? This other dimension where these entities roam freely. And the interesting part about that is that they were quite literally, in order to map the brain out, they had to open up. I think they opened up 160 something people, and they just started probing at their brain and started seeing how the brain was reacting depending on where they were sending impulses in. And they were able to map out, like, this part of the brain controls your lips, this part of the brain controls your eyes, this part of the brain. Everyone's homunculus is different,
Yeah.
but they were able to draw it and sculpt it into like an actual little homunculus. But the interesting part about that is that it's very clear cut. So the cortex man has hands, has lips, has eyes, it looks like a miniature person. In reality, your brain wouldn't ever see your body like that. It'd be more of a monstrosity, how it would see, because it doesn't know the difference between your chin and your neck, right? So there wouldn't be a line here to decipher, like, hey, this is where the neck starts and this is where the jaw starts. Like, it'd be all just deformed, and then your eyes, they
Just one
wouldn't be
blob. Yeah, yeah,
one
yeah.
blob. So essentially a
Like a
monster of
barba
sorts.
papa or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Just like a blob of senses, of
Yeah.
sensory. It's what it is, a neural map of how your brain sees your body, and it sees it as a sort of a monster of sorts.
That's it. That's really interesting. Like, and who's volunteering for that experiment though, to get their head cut open and your brain probed?
It was a lot of people who, that's actually a good question. I don't know who the people were. I want to say that they were.
Or maybe there were people who were considered lesser.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say that there were people in asylums, because there
Yeah,
was this one
yeah,
particular case that, because I have a whole presentation on this I'm going to be doing soon. There was one particular case where the concept of trepanation is drilling a hole into your skull in order to achieve an altered state of consciousness, a higher state
yeah.
of consciousness, by bringing more blood flow to the top of your brain, because your skull limits that, and your brain's not able to breathe, right? And when we evolved, if you believe in evolution, by us standing upright, it drew blood away from our brains. So these trepanists, I guess you call them, whatever, self trepanationists, because they do it to themselves. Before that, before we had lobotomies, it was trepanation, drilling a hole into the skull to let out the demons, to whatever, they were
Yeah,
acting
I
weird.
also heard if it was like if you suffered from like chronic headaches as well, that was another
Yes.
solution as well.
That was before lobotomy. So they started doing trepanation, and then they ditched that and started doing lobotomies, which do a lot more damage. Because
Yes.
trepanation, I'm not saying do it, but it seems to me it doesn't do a lot of damage as far to the brain. Instead of
Mm.
sticking a freaking rod right through your eye, up through your nose, you're just
Jesus.
drilling a small hole. Whatever, people live. It's one of the oldest medical procedures of all time. It goes back to the Neolithic. They find skulls with 6, 7, 8 holes in them at one time, that we know that the person lived because they're healed. right?
Yeah.
So you could tell when they lived and when they died shortly after it. So there was this one particular doctor who had taken a woman who was mentally ill, and again, it's in my presentation. I don't remember what she had. I want to say she was schizophrenic or she had something.
Okay.
And he ended up drilling a hole in her head and doing a trepanation because she had a cancerous ulcer in her on her head, right? So he ended up drilling a hole, and he ended up doing too much uh electrotherapy on her brain, or electrostimulation. And again,
Yep.
I could be getting this mixed up. I'm trying to remember. But essentially he did too much and the woman died. She had seizures until she died.
Shit.
And nothing ever happened to this guy. He was actually criticized for it, but he went on to write numerous books and everything. And he quite literally killed this lady by doing this to her. Right. And again, I have all this on a presentation, so I'll be able to
Yeah.
bring up the guy's name and everything. But it was, again, he was trying to push the boundaries of like, hey, how far can I go? Technically,
Well,
she never gave him
that far.
consent. Yeah,
Yes.
well, that far, because she was off her rocker. She was like, she wasn't there,
Yeah.
and she had agreed to do it, and so he took advantage, and he went way further than he should have,
Yeah.
and she ended up dying 3 days after. Because I remember when I was reading it, I was like, he killed her. I was like,
Yeah.
dude, this is crazy, and nothing ever happened to him. Like, he just
Well, in all fairness, the third leading cause in the U.S. is medical malpractice. Anyhow, so that's still going on.
of like people dying.
Of people dying. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, the third leading cause.
Whoa.
Maybe it could be fourth, but I believe the third leading cause in the U.S. is medical malpractice.
Yeah, the number one is getting hit by the bright line here in Florida, because it kills at least one person a day. It's the blood sacrifice of Florida that they need to keep it going.
Maintain.
Yeah,
Well,
to maintain.
so you were talking, and I know we're coming to an end here, but just going to bring this up here. So you were talking about like corporations being homunculuses as well. Have you ever? And I know we're kind of jumping on some movies here. You ever see the movie called Branded?
No.
It's a Russian film. It was in 2012, and this guy sacrificed like it's kind of slow in the beginning, but it gets going really well.
I've
He ends up
seen this though.
okay,
I've
yeah.
seen it on Netflix, I think.
He sacrifices like a heifer, like a cow, and bathed in the blood, I believe. And then after that, he can actually see these homunculuses that are created from these corporations, and
Whoa.
he can see like them like attacking people or like controlling people. And then he starts using like advertising campaigns to like use it like as a takeover or to attack one corporation to attack another. It's
That's wild, dude.
yeah. It's very, very interesting. I know I watched it, and like I said, it was a little slow getting into it. But after he does that that sacrifice, that ritual, and he sacrifices it to God. But again, then which God? Who knows?
Yeah,
Who
yeah.
knows
In
what
God we trust, but which God is that?
and was it a red heifer? That's one thing I'm trying to remember. Like I'm like, was it a red heifer? I
Oh,
don't know.
don't be anti
Don't go down
Z.
that route, right?
Anti-Z
Yeah.
Zemitic, bro. You're gonna get
We don't want to
canceled.
say that because then I'll
Yeah.
get my videos taken off of
Yeah,
YouTube.
they
Man.
create golems. They don't create homunculus. They actually created the first sex dolls too, by the way.
What?
Yeah, I thought that. Yeah, I thought that was bizarre too. I'll say this. I'll go on record to say this. I am the first person in history ever to do a whole comedy set based on alchemy. I'll say I know for a fact I'm the only person. And when I was telling the jokes, people thought I was, one of the regulars there. He came up to me after the fact. He's like, "Bro, it was so funny what you were saying, but what made it even funnier is that nobody knew what you were talking about." And then I looked at him in the eye and I went, "Everything I said is 100% true." So I'm the only person in the history of comedy to make an alchemical comedy set, and it was all.
Where did you do that? Where did you do the stand up?
So I was opening for Sam Tripoli in Summerfield,
Sweet.
Florida. Yeah, it was my
That's
first
kick
time
ass.
ever and my last time ever doing stand up.
Would you do it again, or you're like one and done, and I can mark that one and move on to something else?
I don't do well speaking in front of large groups, and we had a bigger turnout than anticipated that day,
Yeah,
so that didn't help. And it was the perfect storm to where the jokes would hit because it was the perfect crowd. It was very conspiracy minded.
fair enough.
So they were all up, they were up with the weirdness. Would I
Yeah,
do it again? Yes, if it was for something like that again,
yeah.
but I'm not going to any open micers anytime soon.
You're not going to do just some random stand up and
I can check it off the box and say I opened for Sam Tripoli and I had fun and people laughed and I didn't completely bomb. So it was fun.
well, that's awesome, man. That's something I don't think I would ever do. I don't think I don't got it into me
I
to do
admire
stand up
those that
comedy.
do,
But
bro.
oh yeah, that's
It's an art.
huge.
Yeah.
Exactly. You need how quick on your feet you got to be. Especially ones when you're able to react to something else. Like if something happens, I'm sure you have your set, you got it kind of all written, but you got to be on the ball and change it up if need be.
Yeah, I had a heckler and that threw me off. So
Oh shit.
yeah, she liked the homunculus. Them crazy bitches love the homunculus. So it is what it is, bro. But it was fun, man. And yeah, like I said, this concept goes back in history. Uh, if we want to get biblical,
Yeah.
to the first woman and man that God
True.
created. That Adam in some stories is a golem.
He's made out of clay, right? They made out of clay.
Yeah, he's made out of clay. He's the red man, Adam. So he comes
And
from the earth.
Eve was made from his rib.
Mm-hmm.
What about Lilith?
I don't know where. I think she's more of a demonic entity. So I don't know if
Yeah.
she's like ethereal or what, but that would kind of fall in like the demon realm. Maybe those things were already here. And it would make sense because they're attracted by homunculus. Some people say that homunculus are actually artificial demons. Other people say that they're actually vessels for demonic entities. So you have a lot to pick from when it comes to the
Which is
lore.
interesting. Like these vessels. When you first mentioned that too, I was thinking of the Greys as well. The Gray aliens. That's what they're said to be, is a vessel.
Yeah, and they're small, right?
Yeah.
They look like
Yeah.
little humanoids.
Yeah.
So, and according to some, they were created by the reptilians. So they could be a form of homunculus.
Yeah.
The Epic of Gilgamesh, no, not the Epic of Gilgamesh, but actually, I think in the Epic of Gilgamesh, there's also a artificially created person. But I was going to say the Anunnaki story is very alchemical, where they create a clone, essentially a human hybrid, a human alien hybrid. They take they take the seed of the male and
Yeah.
put it into one of the Anunnaki wombs and create this working class to mine for gold. So
Is that where you think like the jump is in the missing link? Where we went from like Homo erectus to Homo sapiens kind of thing.
Homo
Is
erectus to homunculus right
the
there. Boom.
homunculus right there? Yes.
Maybe, dude. I mean,
Who knows,
I don't
man?
I don't know how far back we go. I want to say it's hundreds of thousands of years. I don't think it's what the Bible says 6,000 years. I think it's way older than that.
I think it's way. I think there's a misinterpretation of the actual time in there. Like I think that when it's written down, what is said is a year is not truly a year. I think
Yes.
it's much longer than that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I think that time itself is a living entity, but that's a conversation for
A whole
another
other
time.
day. Yeah. Well, one, I want to say thanks, man, so much for coming on. And one thing I didn't do in the beginning is like I'm sure everybody knows where to find you, but let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me at www.tjojp.com, and on there you can find my homunculus owner's manual. So if you ever stumble across the homunculus, you want to learn how to take care of it. There's 33 pages of homunculus goodness. A one of a kind homunculus artwork only found on this. I also have the Occultus Mundi that was inspired by Manly P. Hall's All Seeing Eye Journal. The latest one that I published was the Homunculus edition, 88 pages of homunculus goodness in there, where I talk about this is the precursor. This is the homunculus to my book that's eventually going to come out on the topic. Find that on there. And I have the comic books on there.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah, I've seen
currently
those.
working on these are playtest cards, but a Alchemy, the trading card game, which you're going to be able to use homunculus. You're going to be able to play as John D, Edward Kelly, Aleister Crowley, and I'm in the play testing phase right now. I'm doing that with Paranoid American. So for those that want to check out some gameplay, they can go on the patreon.com/one-on-one-podcast, the one-on-one podcast, I believe. So that'll be coming out very soon, hopefully early next year or something, once we are able to figure out the mechanics 100%. But you're essentially gonna be playing as an alchemist battling homunculus or battling whatever.
Another
So
or battling another alchemist, is that possible too?
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So you're gonna
that's cool.
be an alchemist, but then the cards you use are highly esoteric. It's
Yeah.
rituals and things like that. So it's fun. I mean, I have fun with it because
So are you creating magic then itself? Are you creating like this own form of this occult as well with this game?
So the one of the marketing things that we're probably gonna do is like, hey, if you play this, you might summon a demon, or like you're actually doing like an invocation of your holy guardian angel or something like that, like just to
Yeah.
like spice it up.
Yeah.
But it's not just gonna be a cult. We're gonna have a DMT entities deck in there.
Oh,
We're gonna
cool.
have Terrence
Like
McKenna
machine
in
elves and
there,
shit like that.
machine elves, yeah. So we're gonna have angels, demons. There's gonna be a King
Who knows?
Solomon deck.
Maybe an Alush will make it into your deck now too.
Yeah, exactly. So there is the I forgot what I named it, something bulbous canis. It's like a dog dick, the medical term for like a dog dick card in there. The bludgeoning, so you have to bludgeon. It's an action card where you get bludgeoned by a dog dick. So that's a lot of fun. We're in the playtest phase of that. And yeah, man, you can find me on YouTube and pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Spreaker, everywhere, one-on-one. And
Podbean,
yeah.
all those other ones. Yeah, yeah.
Where can people find you, bro? I'm going to put this out for my people too eventually, so they can find
All right,
you.
man. Everywhere that they can find you, pretty much. I'm Spreaker, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, Patreon. I've got a couple episodes going up on Patreon, and I'm going to start pumping out more on there as well. And yeah, so that's where everybody can find me. Facebook, if you want to hit me up, it's Facebook is the easiest place. That's it's kind of dying, but for some reason it seems to have a lot of community in there. So I'm like, I'll stick around there.
Yeah, Facebook's is on its death throes right now, just kicking it, being held up by the Chinese bots, the Chinese homunculus AI bots that are in the chat. Yeah, I'm wrong, but yeah, send me your link too, so I can post them.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then Brad and I from the Awaken podcast, we do a live every couple of weeks together. We do a call-in show. We call it in homage to Coast, we call it C to C, and we do this call-in show. And last night
Brad was there actually. He saw me do the stand-up.
Oh yeah, I gotta ask him about that now.
Yeah, he was there.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Brad's a fantastic guy.
Yeah, he's an awesome dude.
All right, Juan, thanks so much for coming out, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone, that was Juan from One-on-One Podcast, and you know where you can find him. YouTube. I listen to him all the time on Podbean. That's my go-to app to listen to everybody. And so, it was one of the ones I subscribed to. I was subscribed to him. I subscribed to Confessionals, Tinfoil Tales, Tinfoil Hat, and the Awaken Podcast as well, and the Beyond the Frequency. And with that, everyone, I want to say, make sure you're careful creating your homunculuses. Careful that they don't control you and tell you to off yourself. Be one step ahead of them. Be one step ahead of that AI. Just remember, you are in control. You are working in it. You are the one who is operating it. And if you need to cut those ties, cut those ties. And with that, keep your curiosity wandering. Keep the light lit, and always find your way home. I look forward to our next adventure together as we navigate the mysteries that lie ahead. Until our paths cross again, keep your curiosity wandering, keep the light lit, and always find your way home.